Get ready for a very intimate disaster movie. You're watching Beyond the Trailers review of The Impossible.
Boys, come and see this.
Isn't it great?
Can we swim in there?
Yeah, we can go swimming, yeah.
Go get a look at.
Back in the 1970s, the disaster genre rose to prominence with such films as Airport, The Poseidon Adventure, and The Towering Inferno. Those films were not only box office successes, but critical successes as well, garnering multiple Oscar nominations, and not just for visual effects. Both Airport and The Towering Inferno were nominated for Best Picture. And then, in 1997, James Cameron brought even more acclaim to the genre with Titanic, a disaster movie that resonated even more deeply with audiences because it had actually happened. Such is the case with The Impossible. On the day after Christmas in 2004, an underwater earthquake in the Indian Ocean created a tsunami that raced toward the nearby coast, which just happened to be a vacation destination for much of Europe. And since that's a poor region of the world, no tsunami warning systems were in place. Over 220,000 people died, 9,000 of which were tourists. The Impossible tells the true story of a family from Spain who were on holiday in Thailand and is shot at the very resort and locations where they stayed and were almost swept away. This is the first English-language film from Spanish director Juan Antonio Bayona, and has reassembled his team from The Orphanage. If you haven't seen it, rent it. And starring in the film are Ewan McGregor and Naomi Watts, who has already been nominated for a Golden Globe for her performance, plus she's a very strong Oscar contender. There's been some discussion over casting a Scottish and Australian actor to play a Spanish couple, yet when I asked Bayona about it in an advanced screening, he said the family's nationality is never addressed in the film to make them more accessible. And while sure it might have been nice to see Javier Bardem and Penelope Cruz star, married Spanish movie stars, we all know that at the end of the day you make your movie with the most bankable stars you can get, and who would pass up talent like McGregor and Watts? But while the epic qualities of Titanic and a nice cushion of over 80 years made that disaster a little more bearable to watch, will audiences be able to sit through this very recent gut-wrenching tragedy? Let's find out. So one of the reasons I was really looking forward to seeing The Impossible was because I loved The Orphanage just so much. It's a wonderful Spanish language thriller, which is really actually quite scary, scarier than you would expect usually for that type of movie. So I knew that I was in the hands of a very skilled filmmaker going into this, and I have to say that J.A. Bayona does not disappoint, and I feel to a large degree even ups his game. I'm just so impressed with this English language debut. He not only made a film here that's emotionally packed, as you would expect considering the subject matter, but it's action-packed. I mean, you really only have one big action sequence, but it's filmed so spectacularly, and also even the way he, before the calm before the storm, he does a wonderful job of like amping up the tension, but while at the same time showing how beautiful Thailand is. It's really a beautiful movie. I would say that he does an excellent job of making you feel like you experience this horrible, horrible natural disaster. And then the aftermath is really handled very well. You would think that it would be hard to do. I mean, I saw 127 Hours. I did not think that was a particularly good film. I thought that it didn't do a good job with the subject matter. I thought it dragged. But this one, very, very well done. And I think that I'm going to put J.A. Bayona on my list with Duncan Jones of hot upcoming directors that I feel really deserve a big break. And I hope J.A. Bayona fares better than Duncan Jones, because Moon came out a few years ago, and with the exception of Source Code, he has an Ian Fleming film he's working on, supposedly, but his star has just not taken off. He's been on a lot of short lists for superhero films, comic book films, but he just never actually makes the final cut. And I think that now he's going to have competition from J.A. Bayona. If I were a Marvel Studios executive, or if I were over at Warner Brothers, or even Fox, because they have Mark Miller revamping their titles, I would be taking a very serious, hard look at J.A. Bayona. I think this is a name we're going to be hearing of, and I think he just did a fantastic job. So as I said, the movie makes you feel like you were actually there. And the other thing that occurred to me was that I, of course, like the rest of the world, saw all the images and heard the stories, but until you experience it like this, I think you're just unaware of just how horrible it was there and what happened. It was just absolutely a travesty. And it reminds you that even though we have the internet, which supposedly makes the world smaller, in many ways we're still very, very far apart. So I'm glad they made this movie to really kind of show what happened, because I think that it was very, it was very quickly forgotten. So But on that note, my only problem with it is that, some people have brought up and they said, well, 9,000 tourists died, but over 200,000 locals died. And this movie decided to tell the story, I think, of the tourists, obviously. And I think that's a valid choice because it just, who would ever think you would go on a vacation to paradise and this is what would happen to you? So I think it's a valid choice, but during the movie they try and have shots of locals sometimes reacting to things, especially in the aftermath, and I felt it just all it did was serve to remind you that their story wasn't being told. And again, as I said, that's a fine choice to make, but I think the film shouldn't have tried to have it all, have its cake and eat it too. It should have just been like, this is the tourist side of the story, and that's just what we're going to cover. But really fantastically done. The acting, of course, is very, very good. Ewan McGregor does have a small part. I mean, I think people were wondering why he wasn't getting some nominations for this. That's because he just does not have a huge role. It really is, but it's not only Naomi Watts' movie, and she's fantastic. This is the best thing I've ever seen Naomi Watts do. And the work she must have had to do in that water tank is just really amazing. I think I'm really impressed. But the other person who the film really belongs to is Tom Holland, and he plays the tween son, their tween son, who is with his mother, and he just was really good. I mean, I haven't seen this good acting from a child since Dakota Fanning, and I'm talking like young Dakota Fanning, like an I Am Sam when she was kind of cute and before she became like overly self-aware and a little too too precocious. But this little boy, Tom Holland, is a fantastic actor. And I looked him up after the movie, and it turns out that he did the stage work for Billy Elliot in the UK. And he's just, I think he's a talent to watch, along with Bayona. I think he's really a discovery. I was really impressed. So The Impossible is just really a great film. I'm compiling my top 10 list for the year, and The Impossible is going to be on it, if not towards the top. So I can't recommend you see this enough. And the last thing I want to say is that when I was on the red carpet, one of the things I asked the 2 stars and the director was, it's kind of a bummer. Do you really think that people want to sit through a movie like this? And I would tell you that, yes, you do. I think that, I cried, it was very sad, but it was also uplifting. And I think it's important to realize, I think movies are helpful because, you learn a lot of life lessons. You learn other people's life lessons. And this is a true story of what happened to this family. And I think that it's always kind of good to know what happened. And also, I think out of respect to what happened to the people, this tragedy that I think that we never really, I think, fully understood until this movie. So those are my thoughts on The Impossible. I cannot recommend it highly enough. If you've seen it, share your thoughts below. And as always, thanks for coming to Beyond the Trailer for movie reviews like this, audience reactions, trailers, trailer reviews, and movie news. I hope you subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye.